All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. If you've been listening, this is going to be the second part of a series of our investor relations on how I get potential investors and getting them to invest, filling out that accredited form. And I want to walk you guys through the process on how I do that. So on the last episode, you guys recall that if you're running out of your warm market and you've tapped out on all your family and friends, and there's another way that you can go out to source potential investors, and that is actually going face to face, getting out into your community, in your backyard, and just meeting folks. I love doing that. For some folks, I know that's really uncomfortable, and that's okay. There's other ways to skin the cat, like I say. Trade shows, you can go to your RIAs, but again, you want to make sure that you're hitting your avatar, and that is the high income producing individual. I call this your working professionals, your doctors, dentists, lawyers, your chiros. Those guys, they work a lot of hours. They have a lot of money, and they're looking for an alternative to the stock market. So those guys are always a good source of potential investors. So if you're not going face to face, I would highly encourage you to explore that. But so what do you do once you go face to face and you have someone that's interested and they say, hey, Shelley, I want to talk to you more about this. And now you're going into the presentation form. Now, there's two ways that we do it here at Kahuna. We have our face-to-face method, which we do our mailers, and then we also have our email campaign that for people that opt in. So however you do it, however you get the person to get into that meeting with, I'm going to show you step by step on what I do and how you're going to discover who this individual is, what type of investor they are, and how you're going to move them along the continuum. How do you move them to the next step, right? So whether you're doing a face-to-face meeting or whether you're doing an email campaign, now let me just back up for a minute. If you're going to do an email campaign, I would highly encourage you, and this is, there's a lot of syndicators out there, just opt into their email. You can opt into Kahuna Investments email. You'll see, click on Kahuna Deal Room, get on my calendar, come and meet me face to face, and you could see exactly what I do on these calls. But oftentimes when we send out a blast email or if someone opts in, they have the option to, there's we do what's called a lead magnet. So you might want to write down lead magnet. What is a lead magnet? It's something, whether it's a free report or a free book, it's when they click and they say, hey, I want to know more, you're going to give that investor something else, right? You're going to pique their interest to where they say, you know what, this is interesting. I want to know more about why apartments. So your free report should say why apartments, why is apartments a great alternative for the stock, why it's a great alternative to the stock market. And it's really, it's allowing them to get to know you as a company and who you are as an individual. Okay. So a lot of times our free report is actually Corey's book. So if they click the button and they want something free, it's going to be his book. So there's all kinds of ways that you can do for your lead magnet, but that's pretty successful. And so from there, they're going to opt in and download your free report. They're going to get on your calendar, and then you're going to have that conversation with them. All right, so let's talk about the conversation that you're going to have with these potential investors. And guys, I enjoy doing this. I'm a people person. I love people. I can do this all day long. Now, believe it or not, I'm on this podcast and it's very uncomfortable for me. Corey said, hey, honey, you're going to do this podcast series. I'm like, hey, honey, I'm not. And why would you tell your audience this? So if he told you, I kind of went kicking and screaming. So that's why it's taken Mama Peterson so long to get on this podcast, because I'm not going to do it. So again, don't ever tell your spouse what to do. It really has to come from it has to be their idea, right? So, but anyway, I'm here and I'm glad to be here, and thank you for listening in. All right, so when I get someone on a calendar, I'm super excited. I'm like, oh gosh, I have an investor call. I can't wait to meet these people. And so what I like to do is I do the research. So typically they're going to have to answer a couple of questions. How do they find us? And that sort of thing. They're very basic, generic questions. And again, you can opt into the Kahuna Deal Room and just look and see how our funnel works. but I could do a little bit of research, but I really don't have a lot to go on because people are pretty hesitant and giving too much information. They're just really there to kind of feel you out, see what you're all about. And so a lot of times it'll say, I've been investing in single family, or I've invested for 5 years. I've never had any person say, I have $500,000 and I want to invest right now. Okay. I mean, the whole goal of these folks that are calling in and getting on your calendar for you are really simply, it's one reason, and it's for them to fill out the accredited questionnaire. But you're like, wait a minute, Shelley, I thought they already filled that out. No, they haven't. So when they opt in, there's 5 simple questions that they fill out. But the accredited questionnaire is a little bit more detailed out. And if you don't have an accredited questionnaire, let me know. I could send you ours, but it's basically the document that shows whether or not you are an accredited investor or a non-accredited, which is also known as a sophisticated investor. So in order for anybody to see any future deals that we have coming down the pipe, that piece has to be filled out. Okay. So when I have folks that call in on an appointment, and typically these are Zoom calls, and Zoom calls, I try to keep them about 30 minutes. I don't want to go any longer than that. Now, sometimes you build rapport with people and you're having a great time. They can go anywhere from 45 minutes, but typically I'm blocked for 45 minutes. I try to, get off the phone within 30 minutes and within reason, because there's some things you want to do. I call them post-call notes. So after you get off the phone, you're going to want to record everything that you had on that conversation in your CRM. So we use Infusionsoft. So I put it in the notes, who that person's all about and what they're looking for. And then I send them the accredited investor form. And that typically, that is a DocuSign that goes to their email. So all right, so once you're on the call, guys, this is very important, so pay attention. All right, here we go. So when you're doing a Zoom meeting with a person, you really want to make that person feel very comfortable, and you want to make sure that you're building rapport, okay? I don't typically go in, and I call this, back in my old pharma days, we call this feature puking. You'd go into a doctor's office, and then you would show them, hey, doc, here's the benefits of Zocor 40 milligrams. This is one of the drugs I used to peddle back in the days at Merck. And you would tell them all the benefits, and you hope they would, retain all that information. You do not want to do that on this call. So if you have information that you're going to talk to them about, you really want that conversation to be very engaging. I always like to say, if you want to know a lot about that person, because again, they may not be a good fit for you in your company. They may not be the type of investor that you want to be in your deals. Okay. So a lot of times when I'm on the call with a potential investor, I always thank them. So that's the first thing you want to do, guys, is you want to thank them for being on the call, thank them for their time. I always ask, where are you calling me from? And, they're calling me from Utah, they're calling me from Florida. How is it over there? How's COVID? A little bit of small talk. I try to figure out, how did you hear about us? And a lot of times, and I say that because I want to know, where did they get their, how did they find out about Corey? How did they find out about Kahuna Investments? A lot of times it's through so-and-so. So it's either a referral, or it's, I saw Corey speaking at this event, or they know so-and-so, or he was on this podcast. So it's very important that you establish, where did folks find you? Okay. Because that's going to show you what's working in your systems, right? So and then I also clarify, if you have an educational platform, which Corey does, I always clarify, are you looking to be a passive investor, or are you looking to learn how to do multifamily apartments? And it's kind of weird because sometimes I get a little bit of half and half, but that's okay. If they're if they're trying to learn your systems and they want to learn how to do the game, we have a lot of folks that come through that say, you know what, this is more than I thought of. And I just want to simply invest. So, and that happens a lot too. But for the passive investor, I always say there's 2 types of investors. You got your passive investors, and you also have your active investors. Now, your passive investors are the ones that want the cash flow. They like they like the consistency. They like just the cash flow coming in, whether you guys do monthly or quarterly. We pay out quarterly. versus someone that wants to be in a big part of the deal and they want that big payout at the end, right? So I always like to clarify and ask the investor. I'm like, well, what type of investor are you? And I clarify what that means. And it's really interesting because you'll get all kinds of investors. They're like, actually, I like both. I like for the cash flow, and I like to have a strong back end. That's great. So, typically when I have investors that say that, and then I am also questioning, like, well, how long are you currently in any other syndication deals? What have you invested in the past, or what are you currently doing? And this is very important that you want to know their investing history, right? And you also want to get a feel of, have they ever invested in real estate? So this is important information that you need to obtain in order to put into your notes. And so again, we are establishing that substantive relationship, right? So part of establishing that substantive relationship is asking them financial questions. Okay, so it's very important that you get a history of their financial investing experience. A lot of times I hear folks that say, you know what, Shelley, I've never invested in real estate, or I'm just comfortable with stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And so I really want to get a nice feel on, why have they decided to invest in real estate? I'm like, oh, well, if you're new to real estate, why now? Why are you wanting to get into real estate, and specifically why apartments? So as you could see at the beginning of the call, I'm really trying to uncover the investor's needs. I'm really probing to see where I can help them. And guys, that is the key word here, is helping. You want to have your frame of mind is always in a servant state. Okay, when I'm talking to folks, in the back of my mind, I'm not thinking, oh, I wonder how much money this guy has to invest. Oh, like what do I need to say next? Your call should never, ever be structured that way, ever. It always should be coming from a place of a servant's heart, to where you're like, well, how can I truly help this individual? Is this person going to be a right fit for our type of investments? And you're uncovering all of that information to see if they're going to be a good fit for both parties, not just for your company, but it's for that investor. So I always have my investors' goals in mind, always. And you're always trying to uncover, like, how can you best serve them? How can our investments help them, right? And so with that, during the conversation, I would like to use supporting pieces. Now, we have what's called a credibility kit. And for those that don't know what a credibility kit is, it's just it's our brochure of just introducing who we are as a company, our processes and our procedures on what we do when we find, fund, and operate apartments. It shows our track records. And this is a really good piece, because not only do we share this with our brokers, we also share it with potential investors. So as I'm going along the call, and I'm uncovering what their needs are, I'm asking them, well, what questions do you have? And then I ask for permission. I'm like, well, I would love to share how we do our processes and our procedures. Now, if they're brand new into syndication and it's all very confusing to them, and they're like, I've never, I just heard about you guys, I really don't know what it's all about. Sometimes the credibility kit may be a little bit overwhelming. Maybe an informational video is appropriate at that point. And I've done it multiple ways during my face-to-face meetings or my Zoom calls. So informational video is pretty cool. Now, if you don't know what that is, you can have this done on Fiverr. And actually, one of our gals in our mastermind, I'm going to have to give her props. Her name is Lee Cowden. And she's a brilliant individual. And she has her own podcast too. But she came up with this informational video, and I would encourage you to go to our website, kahunainvestments.com, and click on Our Approach. And there's going to be this little video that you click that says Our Approach, and it's a really cool cartoon that talks about syndication. And I think it's like a minute long. It's not very long at all, but it just kind of goes through, how syndications are structured. It's approved by our SEC lawyer. So it just gives a really nice overview. And, a lot of times people are not only, if you're on this podcast, obviously you're an audio learner, but a lot of people are visual learners too. So I would encourage you to go on our website, click on our approach, kahunainvestments.com, go to our approach and click on that video. And you could take that video to Fiverr and say, hey, I want to do this video, but with my company, logo and with my company information. Okay. You're welcome. So whoever, if you're thinking about doing it, it's a great supporting piece when you're talking to folks. So you're welcome. Go check that out. So from there, if, I'll either show them that video, or if they really if they just want to know well, how do you guys talk to me more about your process. In our credibility kit, we have what's called the Trusted Kahuna Cash Flow. And so basically it's a 4-step process. And the first step, it talks about how we acquire deals. And the way that I talk about that, I say, and this kind of puts it in perspective, but I say, in 2018, we closed on 3 projects, 3 deals. And in order to get to those 3 deals, we underwrote over 1,600 properties. And they're like, what? So just to put in perspective, when I talk about our process and procedures, that's an eye opener. So I always tell them hey, this is what I call, our job is finding a needle in a haystack. Right. And so they're like, wow. So, we talk about our processes and that we do have a very conservative approach. Our model's very conservative. I talk to them about our transaction size, right? I talk to them about how many units that we typically do. Our units are, for our criteria, is over 100 plus units. And there's a reason for that. Because if you go over 100, then you can hire good management, right? And if you have, 90%, 85% occupancy, it's not going to hurt you because you still have the rents coming from 85% of your renters, right? So I kind of explain that approach. And then I go on to talk about, our due diligence and our Kahuna management, what makes us different. I talk about how the organization chart, and I break that down for folks, right? And but as I'm going through the presentation, there's one thing that you should always do. You should always check in with folks, right? Does that make sense? Any questions? Right? So it's very important that you keep your investor engaged, right? Because they're going to have questions, but if you're talking over them and we call this feature puking, right? You're just spitting out everything about your processes and your procedures, and you're just rambling on. You really have to, and this is really hard for me. When I first started out as a drug rep, I would go in these doctors' offices and I would say, "Doctor, Zocor 40 milligrams," and I would go blah blah blah, and I would even check in with the doctor, and I'm like, "Okay, sign here, bye." And that's the worst thing that you can do. Now, as you become more seasoned and more mature and more experienced, that approach is completely wrong. Ask me how I know this. So you always want to check in with folks, whether, you're showing them a presentation, you always want to just make sure that they understand and if they have any questions. I call that checking in, right? You want to check in with your investor. From there, the whole goal is to get them to sign the accredited investor form. And so let me just back up because I didn't preface this in the beginning. So once you thank them for being on the call, you also want to set up goals why you're on the call. So I always say, hey, the reason why you're on this call is to get to know us a little bit more, and for us to get to know you, to see if we're right fit. And at the end of the call, or at the end of this meeting, you are going to fill out an accredited investor questionnaire in order for us to see in order for you to see any future deals. So I set the standards or the expectations at the very beginning of the meeting or the beginning of the call. Right? You want to give them the reason why you're doing this meeting or why you're on this call with them. Okay. And so at the end of the call or the end of the meeting, like, oh yeah, I got to fill out this accredited investor questionnaire. Duh. Right. So again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't have notes. If I have notes or if I'm like on the computer, I tend to not do as well on these podcasts. So you have to forgive me. This is all very new to Mama Kahuna here. But yeah, so at the beginning of the call, you want to A, thank them, and B, set up the expectations on what this person is going to do at the end of the call. Okay. And that is just to fill out the accredited questionnaire. And I always tell them too, I'm like, listen, in order for us to show you any future deals that are coming down the pipeline, this has to be filled out per SEC guidelines. Okay. So it's our way of covering each party. You're covering your rear and you're covering theirs. Okay. And then along with that, you're also going to state, I just have some questions to ask you, of your investing experience. And so that's how you could open up that call as well. All right. And we talked about that earlier. Like, how do you open up that call? How do you get the meeting started? Is you're going to ask them about, financial questions and asking about their investing experience. Okay. So now that I've gone through, briefly the credibility kit, and again, if you guys want to hear that presentation more in depth, you can just go on, in our deal room, click the button and get on my calendar. I would love to meet you. B, I'm available to answer any questions you may have. So from there, I typically like to just end the call with, I'm rambling here, but typically I like to end the call with, do you have any other questions? Is there anything else that I can show you? So normally, as I don't even stop there. I really want to give people a lot of information while I have them in front of me. I call it a captive audience, right? So typically I will not only show them the credibility kit, but I'll say, hey, as a passive investor with Kahuna Investments, here's what else we do. And I walk them through our IMS, which is our investor portal, right? And I go, here's where all of our future deals, and I always preface on, once we get off on this call and you sign the accredited questionnaire, so I'm leading them into, I keep reminding them not to, to fill out that questionnaire. So once you are done filling out the accredited questionnaire, it's going to come to you via email through DocuSign. You're just going to fill it out, whether you're accredited or non-accredited. The letter A is going to be accredited, and then B, if you're non-accredited, that's okay. We do what's called a 506B offering. We do take some sophisticated investors. Just make sure in the paragraph and in the B section that you're going to list what you have invested in. Okay, whether it's stocks, bonds, mutual funds, other real estate property, but just let us know what other types of investments that you're involved in, right? And I say so once you fill out that accredited questionnaire, I'll just say Billy, here's what's going to happen next. So I'm walking them through the expectations of what's going to happen after they fill out that accredited questionnaire. So I'll pull up the IMS portal and I'll say, here's the portal. You will have access to your own personal login, and any future deals that are coming down the pipeline, you will get first look at it. Okay. You will get first look. Now, it is a first come, first serve. And I've had this question before. They'll say, well, Shelley, how many investors do you have? And I'll tell them how many investors we have. And I'll say, and they say, well, gosh, that's a lot of investors. I said, that's why you want to act quickly. So there's a sense of urgency, and it really is, because once a deal goes out, it could get funded quickly, depending on the deal. And so I always coach any new investors, like, if this is something that you're interested in, once you see a deal, you'll want to get on Corey's calendar. He'll walk you through the deal. And if it looks good for you, then you're going to want to transact on that deal. Okay. So I set the expectations on what that looks like. Right. So I show them the IMS portal, show them how to maneuver through that. I say, we have our assistant. Now let me just back up. I know that a lot of you guys that are out there listening, you're like, well, shoot, Shelley, I'm just getting started. This is a lot, and that's okay. There's other ways You could do that too. You could do it manually. For the longest time, we had a big old Excel spreadsheet and we would like log people in. So if you're just starting out, don't let this system overwhelm you, because there's other ways that you can keep track. I do highly recommend that you do get a CRM to at least track your appointments and your notes, because once you start building your email campaign, or if you're going out face to face, you're gonna have a database. Now, when I say go out face to face, I hit the field pretty hard. I'm looking to talk to anywhere from 15 to 25 people a day when you're out in the field, okay? When you're going face to face, you're knocking on a lot of doors. Now, Corey used to do this back in his Edward Jones days, and I can't remember the metrics, but I want to say he had to do 25 doors a day. Could you imagine knocking on, random homes, going into a neighborhood, knocking on their houses in the Phoenix heat, 100 triple digits in a suit and tie? Oh my gosh, my poor honey. That was hard work. So at least I'm in the AC, which is really nice. But no matter how many contacts you get in a day, you're going to want a way to track them. So again, we use Infusionsoft for our CRM, but I would look into, I know that there are some CRMs that are out there that are probably, very inexpensive or perhaps free. But you definitely need a tool to track your activity and to track your calls and your conversation. You need that to cover your butt with the SEC, okay? Because they're gonna, for any reason, if you ever get audited, God forbid, and that is not a fun process. We have friends that have gone through that process, and it's quite scary. You want to have records, right, of your conversation. You want to have documentation of, I got the accredited questionnaire form. This is the timeline when I talk to these folks. Here's the conversation. Here's the emails that I've gone through. You want every touch that you have with that potential investor, you want to be able to record that outcome. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so again, as I'm walking folks through, the expectations of, I walk them through our IMS portal. I also go over like, hey, here's what to expect as a passive investor. Here's what you get in the future. So I always kind of paint the picture for them of what's going to happen down the road. Hey, once you've committed to an investment, here's what's going to happen next. And I walk them through of the documentation. I briefly go over, the full PPM. You'll get a full PPM. You'll get the PPM signature pages. All the documentation that our passive investors get, we typically put them in, we call it an investor binder. So I'm going to show them our investor binder on the call. I'm like, here's, a lot. Now you can get all this information, all your K1s, any documents that you are in a deal with, it's going to be in your portal. So you can log in and get access to that anytime. But if you're not, if that's something that you don't want to do, we also send out what's called an investor binder. And the investor binder is basically just that. It's going to have a resource tab for our person that handles IMS. It shows you how to log in. It's going to have their rate of return. It's going to have the amount of their quarterly payment. It's going to have information about that particular apartment deal that they invested in. It's going to have their PPM, the full PPM, the PPM signature pages, all the documents pertaining to that specific deal for that individual is going to be wrapped up in a nice binder, and they can put it on their bookshelf. And a lot of people like that. They like to be able just to go, oh, here's one apartment, that I'm invested in, and they like to pull it off the shelf, and they love that. So I always kind of paint the picture of what happens next once they invest. But again, I'm always going back to, don't forget to sign the accredited questionnaire form after we get off on this call. Okay. So I'm going to wrap this up with another little nugget that I like to do. So if someone comes through my email campaign, well, guess what I have is missing? Something that I don't get through face-to-face. It's their mailing address. So oftentimes before I end the call, I say, hey, by the way, do you have Corey's book? Or, they're like, oh, no. Well, you know what? Let me send you one. Right? I don't even ask for permission or, hey, can I have your address? No, I'm very directive. Here's what I found over the years, and I've learned this from talking to a lot of busy working professionals, especially doctors. people like to have direction, right? They like for you to tell them what to do next. You don't, a lot of times, so back in my pharmaceutical days, doctors, they're so used to the nurses saying, doctor, room 4, doctor, here's what's next, doctor, sign here. I kind of treat this the same way when trying to get the investor to fill out the accredited form, or trying to, I don't even try, I just do. It's like, Master Yoda, there's no try, you just do. So I just say, hey, what's your mailing address? What's your mailing address? Right? And shut up. And they tip. I have never had anyone say, I'm not comfortable giving you my mailing address. I always, 100% of the time, that's my batting average. I always get their mailing address. The only way that you're not going to get their mailing address, there's only one reason, and that's because you didn't ask for it, my friend. So very simple. Hey, what's your mailing address? I want to send you this report that I have. I think you're going to find this really interesting, or a newsletter, or a book, right? Send them whatever, but get their mailing address, because guess what you get to do once you have their mailing address? It's a double whammy effect, you guys. You send them your mailing campaign. So you remember those postcards that I was talking about on the last episode? Yeah, so now that you have their mailing address, you're going to send them a book, and then you're going to send them your postcards. And again, our postcards are they're so simple, but I create what's called a tickler file, right? And I divide them up into 5 weeks. And so once I get off the phone, I'm going to click the button and send them the accredited questionnaire form. And guess what? My batting average on that is very high. It's literally, I think right now it's like 95%. And if they don't fill it out, I get a reminder. It says, hey, Shelley, so-and-so didn't fill out their accredited questionnaire. So I can give them a call and say, hey, you haven't filled out your accredited questionnaire. We got deals coming down the pipe. You might want to fill that out so you don't miss out, right? Once they fill out the accredited questionnaire, you're good on your end. Like, you've done your job. That was the whole goal of that phone call, that Zoom call, or that meeting, was to get them to sign that accredited questionnaire. But you also obtain their mailing address. So now you can send them goodies in the mail. All right, so pay attention. Here's what you're going to send them for the mailer campaign. All right, so first thing is a thank you letter. I always send a handwritten thank you letter saying, thank you so much for meeting with me. Looking forward to helping you achieve your multifamily investing goals. You could keep it very simple. Or if there was something personal in the call, if they tell, I'm very nosy, guys. Like, I always obtain the craziest information. Like, people just tell me things. I don't know why, but they do. But I know if they're going through a divorce, or if they, just got back from vacation, how many kids they have. I always ask them also, just because I'm truly curious. I'm like, well, what do you like to do for fun? I always ask them that during the call. I'm like, well, what do you do for fun? I like to karaoke. I like to dance. I like to cook. Secretly, I think I feel like in the near future, I'm going to be on that show, Chopped. It's like, Alex, give me a basket, man. I want to create something cool. So don't be surprised if you see me on the show Chopped one day, because I could throw down some food. Yeah, so that's going to be my next life. I told Corey, I'm like, I want to go to culinary school. I feel like I could probably do it. But, that's kind of my secret dream here, is to go to culinary school for fun. I think it'd be awesome. All right, so I always ask them what they do for fun. So you can put that in your thank you card. Hey, next time you go on go riding, let me know, or something personal in the card. You can keep it generic. You can keep it, you can make it personal, but the bottom line is you want to make sure you send them a thank you card. And if you've been watching Corey, or if you've been paying attention to how he does his thank yous, he has his little wax seal. I don't know if you guys can see this, but he loves to put that wax seal of approval. It's so funny. So guess what? I have my own personal wax seal, but mine's a pineapple. So hospitality, that's what it represents. Love it. So they'll get a personal card from me, and then next week they're going to get meet our team. So our postcard, the first postcard that they'll get is just like it's a 4x6. Just make it small, 4x6 little postcard. Keep it very simple. And inside it just talks about our culture. It talks about our team and, welcome aboard. We're excited to get to know you more. And then week 2, they're going to get another postcard and it's going to say, are your eggs all in one basket? And then week 3 is why apartments? And then week 4, so we have 5 postcards that are going to talk about why apartment investing, right? And it's going to give them more information about you as a company and about your processes. And it also, what I love about a mailer campaign is it also keeps you top in mind, right? It's not like the conversation is just going to go away. You met with these people and then you're done with. You want to have your brand, your company visible. Okay. Remember on the last episode, I think I told you guys that in order for a message to stick with folks, they have to be exposed 16 times of the same message. It's crazy, but I guess that's how our brain works till we finally get it. And also, you want to make sure that you're getting your brand, your name out there because, when they are ready to invest, if they do get a pile of money, like, oh yeah, I remember talking to Shelley at Kahuna Investments. I really like their processes and procedures. I really connected with those guys. They seem, I want to know more about them. Well, guess who they're going to call? Because guess what? We're not the only syndicators that are out there. There's a lot of other people that are out doing the exact same thing that we're doing. So the key is how do you separate yourself from other syndicators, right? What is that, what is it that makes our company special and what is it that we do different that's going to attract the right people into our deals? Okay. So with all that being said, I hope this was, you guys got some really good nuggets here. I feel like I'm all over the place sometimes, so forgive me, but this is a lot of fun. If you want to know more about what I do and how I do it, please feel free to reach out. You can hit me up on Instagram, Mama Kahuna, or, go to any of our social media outlets, or quite simply, if you ever just want to go through the process, just click on the deal room and get on my calendar. Hey, I'm not going to hate you for it. I would actually welcome it. And I'm here to help you any way that I can. All right, guys. Hope you have an awesome week. We will be chatting real soon. Take care, everyone.